Hiya. Have you ever tried to write music that's epic enough for a dragon to do its taxes by, but ended up with something that sounds more like elevator music in Mordor? Don't worry, we're going to fix that today and write some epic landscape music. Okay, so on the right hand side there you can see the brief for epic landscapes. It's always good to start with a brief, and I'll put this one in the description underneath the video so you can use it for your own inspiration. Generally they tend to be broken into different sections, one describing the atmosphere, one explaining what sort of instruments you might want to use, and then normally some examples of TV shows or films where you might find this kind of music for inspiration. Let's have a look at what I have done here. I've basically started off with a string line, and it is very simple. It is just this long melody. So we're doing long held out notes. It's all on E flat, using E flat and then E flat over G, A flat, B flat, and then we use G minor coming up now to build into A flat and B flat as an ending. And that pretty much goes through the entire track. That's it. That's the main string line. Later on, we do get into some slightly higher string lines here, but they are just doubled. We're just adding an extra layer on top of what we've already got. And it's literally in octaves. Still sticking with strings, I'll ignore those two for a second. Another thing I've added is low strings, obviously. So I've got these from Abbey Road 1. In fact, all these are Abbey Road 1 so far. And they add a nice little, let's just get them on their own. Nice epic sound. Just picking out the bass notes that we've just gone through. I have also added in Albion 1 strings. Now these are a great little get out if you want to glue string parts together. You don't need to make them overly loud, but they will just add that extra little nice warm pad. And if we put it with everything else we've got so far, the soaring strings would come in later. And if I get rid of the brief, we can also see these other two tracks, which is spiccato, and they are doing an ostinato when we get to the later section. So I like to have the different effects on different layers. So here you can see we've got spiccato in Abbey Road 1. And they're just an octave apart, so we get a fuller sound. And that's it. That's the entire string section. We start off relatively slowly. Halfway through we introduce these ostinatos, and at the end we put absolutely everything in. Another thing to note is I've done quite a lot of automation on all these tracks to give it the extra emotion to the track and keep the interest building as we go along. Next up is the brass, and a classic combination is trumpets and horns. Now remember, trumpets will be able to stand on their own against a section of horns. So what I've done here is use BBC SO, the single trumpet, just doing those fifths with a few accidental notes in. But if you're building up those sort of trumpet fanfares, then jumping in fifths, so using E flat, B flat, and then going up to the higher E flat, that's a really easy starting place. What we then have later on is we use the horns. It's about the tenor trombone for a second. And that's a whole horn section, which later on is going to combine with the trumpets. And you can hear that's a single trumpet and a horn section, but the trumpet stands nicely on its own. I have put in the tenor trombone. It was a bit of a last minute thing actually, and I just felt the bass of the whole piece was missing something. So pick a tenor trombone. I've literally used the same notes from what the bass strings were doing. There you go. So we've got strings and brass. Now we get into the percussion. That's literally all there is left. I've got some Abbey Road 1 bass drums doing these nice little rolls. I've got the snare from BBC SO. Notice I've put mine as 100 on that track title just to remind me. I've actually offset it by negative 100 milliseconds, so it just comes in ahead of the beat. It starts off doing those single ones, and then later on we get to slightly crisper and the extra shot first. That builds the intensity as we're going. And then I've also got damage in here with some just low hits, and they start off with this patch. I've had to split it, as you can see here, because the note actually had an extra loud hit in it, but we just split it out. That's fine. And then a slightly different patch when we want it to build a little bit later. Then we've got the tune percussion, BBC SO's timpani, and I've literally just played these hits in myself. That's always quite good fun to do. And if you play it in yourself instead of automating it and looping it, it does give it a bit more of an organic feel. And at the end, I decided I was going to add some tubular bells as well. Just picking out some notes from the chord. Again, we're trying to build and layer and get more things in towards the end. Finally, we've just got these cymbals. We've got the cymbals and tam-tams. So the cymbals are doing this. And the tam-tam, if you're not familiar, is this sound. If you put them both together, really nice little combination you can do there. And you can see I've slightly offset them to get different effects as we go along. And that's literally all I've done. I think the key thing in all this is not to overthink it, but even though you start with something relatively simple, so a simple melody and some bass notes, don't forget you're going to be adding these other things later. Use this as a template and have a go at building it up the same way yourself if you like. I'm going to play it for you in full so you can hear what this piece sounds like. Don't forget to like and subscribe, that's always appreciated. I'll put a link to the template I used to create these stems and reverbs, which is the extra end part of the composition process. But see you in the next video. Bye for now.